I'd like to greet everyone personally. So I'd like to welcome cousin Jennifer and Dan and Mike and Dwight. I'm sorry I didn't meet you. What's your name? Linda. Linda, greetings. And Amy and Kevin, good to meet you. And David and Chris and Robert, among other names. And Jean and Melissa and Skip and Smarwick, right? And Judy and Mary and Martin Muhammad. Greetings. I know what you're thinking now, good looks and brains. Right? Maybe not, huh? All right. Well, has this ever happened to you? You go to an event, you meet somebody. Excuse me. Has this ever happened to you? You go to an event, you meet somebody, they tell you their name, and about 5 seconds later, you've forgotten who they are. Wouldn't it be great if you could simply reach into your memory and retrieve the names of everyone you meet at an event, no matter how many people there are? You demonstrate care and commitment to these new prospects. You show yourself to be a competent business and sales professional, and they'd remember you because you remember them. Who would like to be able to remember everybody you meet at an event? Yes, of course, we all would, right? Is there anybody here that can do that right now? No? That's okay, because that's why I'm here. Because now there was a time when I couldn't do it, but I learned the tricks and techniques, and now I can remember more than 40 people when I go to an event. And you can too. I know you can, because I don't have any special memory gift. I don't have any natural talent. I've just learned the tricks and techniques that I'm going to present to you today. So you'll be able to do it too. But names are hard, aren't they? Because we don't go to an event in order to memorize names. We go there because we have our own agenda. Here's the sad but true story of Sue. Sue is a young college graduate applying for her first teaching job. She's 24 years old. She wanted to make her parents proud. She came to the event and was greeted by 5 men for the interview. But she wasn't paying attention to their names because she was nervous about what she was going to say. After about 20 minutes, she was asked, "Sue, what do you know about John Brown?" This is true. She said, she thought about her educational training and couldn't come up with anything and said, "I don't know who that is. I've never come across that name before." And they said, "Yes, you did, Sue. He was the third man you were introduced to today." Well, Sue was just devastated. She was shocked and embarrassed. And she thought, oh, these people will think that I'd make a terrible teacher because I'm not paying attention. And she didn't get the job. But she did remember the lesson all her life. And the lesson is, names are important. We need to focus when people tell us their names. Some industries expect or even require it, right? But we don't want to embarrass people and offend them by calling them by the wrong name. So sometimes we'll just say, "Hey, you," or something like that. What types of terms do you use when you can't remember somebody's name?
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Okay.
Hi, George.
Friend, what do you say?
Hi, George.
Hi, George. That's the go-to, huh?
Hey, buddy.
Hey, buddy. Yeah. I have a quote in my book from Zsa Zsa Gabor who says, "I call everyone darling because I can't remember their names."
Darling.
Yep. Now, I know what it's like to be called by the wrong name because I grew up with an identical twin brother. So for the first 19 years of my life, I was called the wrong name. That's why my McDonald's name tag said Bob or Bill, because that's what people called me anyway. In fact, I have a before picture right here. See if you can figure out which one I am. I'll give you a little hint. I'm in the same position in the after picture right there. So we did look quite a bit alike. And so our out-of-state relatives just called us the Minnesota Twins.
Oh.
Now, I had a cousin Roger, who used to call us Bob and more Bob. And but now Bill's grandchildren just call me Grandpa Fake. Now, it can be annoying sometimes to be called by the wrong name, right? And annoyance is a bad way to start off a business relationship, right? So, but names are hard because we are trying to fill in a formula that is name equals face. And that formula is missing some variables because name does not equal face, because a name is a nonsense word and a face is an image, and a word does not equal an image. So in this presentation, I'm going to be giving you 3 tips and 3 techniques for recalling names. Tips can be implemented as soon as you hear them. Techniques will take a little bit of practice. So first, I'm going to give you 2 very quick tips. And the first one is so Zen-like in simplicity, you're going to be amazed at how I came up with it. It is remember to remember. Pretty deep, huh? What I'm talking about here is presence of mind. This is like planning ahead. Like when you go shopping in the Mall of America in the morning, you park your car in the giant parking garage, not thinking that you're going to have to come back later and try to find your car. Just plan ahead. So it's the same thing when you go to an event. Just decide that you are going to work on remembering people's names, and that will help. The second quick tip is, as soon as someone tells you the name, repeat it back to them immediately, because then you're creating a memory in your mind of saying their name, and that will help. But the formula is difficult to fill in, and that's why I'm going to be presenting my 3-step method that's taught in my book, Remember the Room, how to remember everyone you meet at an event. The great thing about this book is that I wrote it for my eyes, so it's in 14-point font, so it's easy to read, and there's a quick lesson or story every 2 pages, and I'll have those available for sale afterwards. But I left them in the car. Yes, that's right. Anyway, here are the 3 steps. Look, listen, and link. Sounds pretty simple, right? What I mean by that is you look at the person, you listen to the name, and you link them together mentally. Well, that should be pretty simple, right? Especially the first part. Look, I mean, that should be easy. Now, I've learned that in this world, some people are easy to look at and some people are hard to look at. And I know that I fit into the second category. But even though I'm hard to look at, I've discovered the secret to always looking my best. Ugly friends. But looking should be pretty simple, right? But in this culture, we don't actually look. In our church, we have a greeting time every Sunday. And so I shook hands with the man one Sunday and I said, "I'm Bob Miller, what's your name?" And he said, "I'm Sam." So I looked at him because I wanted to remember him if I saw him at church again. After church, my sweet Becky and I went to Menards, and so did Sam. There he was, walking down the alley right towards us. It was such a funny coincidence that I grinned big and I waved and I said, "Hi, Sam." His reaction was, people wave and keep on walking. That's what I got from him, because he obviously hadn't really looked at me. So when you look at somebody, you should choose one striking feature that stands out more than anything else. And the reason you choose that one striking feature is because that's probably going to be the thing that you notice the next time you see them. The first thing you notice should probably be the thing that you choose, one striking feature. You should look at them as if you had to describe them to a police sketch artist. Look at their eyes, their ears, their nose, their chin. Look at their hair. Look at their skin for moles, tattoos, piercings, or something unique that stands out. And choose just one. Okay. The second step is listen. Of course, you have to listen to the name, but this is active listening. Next thing is you have to convert their name into an image or an object that will remind you of their name. Because what is a name? It's a nonsense word. It doesn't mean anything. What is a Michael? What is a Sally? What is a Lisa? They're words without definitions, right? So we're going to convert the word, the name, or part of the name into a word that will remind us. So for example, if someone says their name is Michael, you could convert it to Mike, right? If someone says that their name is Sally, you could imagine and really see in your mind's eye a salad. What kind of salad is it? You have to really see it. If someone says their name is Lisa, you could imagine and really see a dog leash. What it's made out of, is cord, is it chain, really see it. Now the word that you choose to remind you does not have to sound like the name. It doesn't have to start with the same letter, because this is not a sounds alike system. This is a reminds you of system. Choose anything that will remind you of the name. That's why I remember that the waiter at the Mexican restaurant is named Elvis, because I just imagined a guitar. Okay? So now we've done 2 things. We've made the face more memorable by choosing one striking feature. We've made the name more memorable by converting it into an image or an object that we can see. So now we have 2 images. Those we can link together. So step 3 is linking them together mentally in a funny or unusual way. Why funny or unusual? Because weird is easier to remember. boring and ordinary is not easy to remember. That's why it was difficult for me to remember some of your names. Just kidding. Obviously, you're all very memorable, right? Because I did recall everybody that I met. And so I have the bobber up here to represent my name. And so you could look at me and notice that I'm follically challenged, right? So you could choose my bald fate as your memory cue, no pun intended, and link it to the name Bobber and come up with something like this, okay? And if it helps you laugh, that's great. Now you'll see that what we're talking about here has less to do with memory and more to do with imagination, okay? If I ask people, do you have a great memory? They always say no. If I say, do you have a good imagination? They usually say yes. So this is not memorizing, this is imaginizing, okay? And so you just link them together in that way. And that's the 3 steps very quickly. And there is a third review tip though. And the review tip is review. Yes, review is required. You do have to review. So before you leave an event, you look at every person that you met and remind yourself of their name. Or if you get back from an event and you have a stack of business cards, or maybe you've got people signed in on your sign-up sheet for the open house, you look at everybody's names and you try to recall what they look like. That will help a lot. Now, if you do any one of these tips or techniques, it will improve your memory. If you do them all together, you become a memory rock star, right? Now, when I said that I was converting your names into images, some of you might wonder about that. I will give you an opportunity. If you're curious, I'll tell you what image I use for your name. Just raise your hand if you want me to tell you. Okay, Kevin, this is going to sound weird. Now I use Kelvin, which is a thermometer measurement, so I think about a thermometer, okay? You can use anything that will remind you. And by the way, the word that I choose for the name has nothing to do with the way the person looks. Every Kevin I name that I meet, I'll be thinking about Kelvin. Who else had their hand raised? Okay, Dwight. Okay, Dwight, I thought of white. It rhymes for me and it works for me. That's what I use. Should we do something? Chris or Christine or Christopher is always Christmas tree for me. Christmas tree. I always think of Christmas tree. Yes, Jean. Jean, guess what I use? Gina. Yes, you know what I use? Jean. I use and for Melissa, I use Missile. Missile, yeah. So, okay. And for David, I use Divot. Okay, great. So that's enough, but has nothing to do with the way that people look. Yes.
So all the Kevins that you meet, you use that?
Yes.
And all the Davids you meet?
Right. You use the same image for every name. So you develop a whole dictionary in your mind that you'll be able to use very quickly. Okay? Now, when I said that I could remember more than 40 people at an event, how many of you had the thought, I could never do that? Raise your hand if you were thinking that would be very, very difficult for you, okay? That's what's called a self-limiting belief. Now, self-limiting beliefs hold us down, right? Because why would you try to do something that you didn't think you could achieve, right? There used to be a point in my memory career where I didn't think that I could remember more than 40 people. So if more than 40 came to a magic show, I wouldn't even try to remember anybody, okay? But I overcame that, okay? In the Eagles song, Already Gone, they say, sometimes we live our lives in chains, not even knowing that we have the key. And the key is to believe in yourself, to say, I think I can do it. And that's what I said at the point in my career. I said, okay, I'm going to give it a try. I said, more than 40 sounds impossible, but I'm going to try it. And I got better and better at it. In fact, on my website, you can see a video of me recalling 80 people. 80. If I can do it, you can do it too. In fact, one of the hardest things that I have to do when I speak at keynote presentations or workshops or wherever I'm at, the hardest thing that I have to do is to convince the listeners that they can do this. I don't have any special memory gift. I can forget stuff as easily as anybody, okay? So I hope that you guys will give that a try and that you'll believe in yourself, and then you may have a great experience, okay? Like maybe you're going to see a bunch of people that you're going to come in to an open house and you're just going to be overwhelmed. There's more people than you can remember, and they got kids and pets, hopefully not, but you know, and you just think, oh, I don't know, but you're going to practice the technique. The only way you're going to know is if you practice and you say, I think that I'm going to try to do it, okay? And then you're going to see somebody, you're not going to be certain about their name, but you're going to notice the striking feature. And that's going to remind you of the name image. And then you'll have this really cool experience of, it'll be like, ding, a light bulb goes off. You're going to say, hey, I remember you. And you're going to call them by name, and they'll feel great. And then you'll feel great. And then you'll say, yes, I can do it. I believe that I can do it. But the only way you're going to know is if you give it a try. Well, we know intuitively that it's important and valuable to remember names. We know it's great for business and personal relationships. But why? Why is it good for personal relationships? Is it good just because we're serving ourselves, we're gaining another prospect or customer? No, I think that there's a deeper and more important reason. When I was 19 and still living at home on my parents' farm in Clear Lake, after church one Sunday, I ran upstairs to my bedroom and I put on a disguise, a really good disguise. Long dark-haired wig, shaded sunglasses. I darkened my teenage mustache and eyebrows. I had a ripped army vest with no buttons or sleeves, no shirt, a gold medallion, ripped jeans, and I changed my voice. Then I climbed out the window down the tree and I knocked on the back door of the house and acted like I was a person whose car had broken down and I needed to use the telephone to call a tow truck, which was a common occurrence at our house in those days. This is a simulation of what I looked like. Okay? And my mom was in the kitchen cooking, and I came in and said, "That's not I didn't have a good picture of her. I came in and said, "Can I use the phone?" And I thought the gag would be over immediately. They'd recognize me. You know, I talked to them for 10 minutes. They did not know who I was. And inside I was thinking, this is the best gag ever. This is going to be so funny when I reveal myself to them. But then after a while, I started to get a really weird feeling, an uncomfortable feeling that I'd never had before. I was a stranger to my parents. They were looking at me, but they didn't see me. I could see them, they couldn't see me. I was unknown, unloved, and unwanted. Literally, because my mom had gone to the other room and she said, "Roy, there's a weird guy here who wants to wait by the telephone. You tell him to go wait out by his car for the tow truck." So my dad came into the room and gave me a big grin. I thought he recognized me right away. What would have happened? He didn't, though. But what would have happened if my dad would have kicked me out of my own house? And I said, "Can I wait here?" He said, "Sure." Fortunately, my parents had a great sense of humor. And when he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to visit my crazy parents." And I ripped my wig off, and they all laughed for about a week afterwards. So it was very funny, but I still remember that feeling. I didn't like that feeling of being unknown. You know, that's how people feel when they go to a networking event or they meet you for the first time or they come to an open house. They don't know anybody. They feel like a stranger in a sea of strangers. And so if you meet them and greet them and call them by name, that's like throwing a life preserver out to a drowning person. They will feel great about it. So recalling names is good, not just because you're serving yourself, you're gaining another business prospect. It's good because you're serving the other person. You're helping them to feel better. You're making a human connection, and that's the best type of business connection, isn't it? Well, think about Sue, the young college graduate. What would have happened if she had said, "John Brown? Oh, yeah, it's this guy right here." Now, it's not a guarantee that she would have gotten the job, but it's certainly a guarantee that she would have been remembered for that. That would have put her in the top of her category. You want to be in the top of your category? You want to be remembered as a person who shows care by remembering names? Then this is one system for you. I hope you're motivated and inspired to that. And people always feel very inspired by this. But there's a little bad news. This is a curve of forgetting. This shows how quickly you'll forget something once you learn somebody's name or once you learn this information I'm teaching to you today. In about 2 days, you have forgotten half of it. Now, if you review it again and again, then eventually you won't forget it. That's why eventually these name systems will fall away. You won't need to use them anymore. You'll just know who the person is, right? But it would be wrong for me to inspire you to do this and then not give you some applications for how to do it. So I'm going to give you 3 quick applications. First of all, I'm going to give you an opportunity to subscribe to my free email course. It's only 20 weeks long, and it teaches mnemonic techniques. So you'll be reminded every week you'll get an email. If you don't like it, you can just unsubscribe. Secondly, you should practice this all the time. Whenever you meet somebody new, practice the look, listen, and link technique. Even if you're watching TV or a movie. Sometimes a movie gets done, I don't know the characters' names. I only know the actors' names. But practice this technique, it will help. And third, you should consider buying and reading the book. It will help, and it comes in 3 different formats. Paperback, which I don't have, but they're in the car, or Kindle or audio format, okay? And I'm gonna give you a QR code so you'll be able to find that online too, okay? So I want you all to believe that you can really use your own memory powers to build strong business and personal relationships. To remember the room, I believe that you can do it. I know that you can do it. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today.